Hey, everybody. How are you doing, man? I'm just jamming here. Just a great day. And man, I tell you ever heard the expression been busier than a one-armed bandit tied behind his back it's been wall to wall busy here. I don't know about you, but hello, everybody. How are you doing? Trust you're in a good state and thriving. And let me just invoke favor from on high upon all of us. Favor, protective favor. We're going to start each Monday and we're going to read our affirmation. And if you've got the cleansing favor ritual, you know what I mean. How y'all doing? So good to see you. Hello, Julianne Payne. How are you doing? So the Bee Gees grew up right down from you. How cool is that? I like the Bee Gees. I like the disco era. I had fun with that. Um, really had fun with it. I mean, I like to dance. And, disco was just one of those things that came around. Hello, Infant Frequencies. Good to see you. Twisted Isby. Hello. Otis, good to see you. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, Otis. Hey, Steve, going to get you back on. And speaking of which, I'm really backed up on the emails. I have been really busy with something, and it's just so if you send an email and it's a week late, don't worry, I'll get to it. It's just the way it is sometimes. So, hello, Susie Q. How are you doing? But the disco era, it was so cool. I mean, yeah, I was living down in Houston, Texas, and it's when the Texas legislator, in their brilliance, made the drinking age 18, which just so happened to be the year I turned 18. And right at the same time when the disco scene was really kicking it up. And wow, I don't know. And the thing about it is, as I look back on it, disco was hell of a lot of cardio. I mean, you think about it. Anyone who was caught up in that knows what it was. It was a groovy time. Um, you know, it, it it gives you a good cardio workout. I had a 24-inch waist back then. Good Lord, I was skinny. Anyway, so Nina the Mystic, I got your email, dear, and yours one on the list. Morgan is another one, and yeah, understand, and we're groovy. So who else is around here? Halo Truth in Me. I have to send you an email for do that. Absolutely. Hello, David Castle. How all the moderators, David Barry and all the rest of y'all. Gary, good to see you. Dwayne and Dark Truth. Emperor Rex. Hello, Grandpa. Brian, how are you doing, my friend? Good to see you. Pure Love Ascension. Hello. Good to see you. Burning Ego. B. Indeed. So good, Karen. Good to see ya. Robert V. Good to see you, my friend. Lucky Stone. Like that one. So, yeah. Hey, is the world going crazy enough for you? So it's official. Right before we went on live, um, the World Health Organization has now labeled the COVID-19 virus as an official global pandemic. Woo! Okay, let's have a sip of tea. They keep this crazy stuff, it's it's getting out of hand. Really getting out of hand. And the markets, yeah. Folks, this is like being on the tail end. How many of you have flown? Back in the day, there was the L1011, TWA flew them, Eastern flew them. Anyway, I remember we were flying into Las Vegas, and if you sat in the back, and I did, the back end of the plane was doing this number as it was landing because of the crosswind. If you are having occasion to get motion sickness, that's when you're going to get motion sickness. Anyway, that's what we're on right now. It is a wild, wild ride materializing. Hey, want to show you what kind of crazy stuff is going on. So, we get this in the mail, and I'll just show it up for everybody. So if you look at this, and by the way, these sneaky SOBs, I'll just be kind to them. They don't ever tell you who and what they are. They just simply, put this thing out. So everyone take a good look, because they are convinced we are in the midst of the tribulation. We are at the halfway point, and from here on out, it's going to get ugly. But look at this. I mean, you can look at everything on their emojicon, and they're blaming that on the tribulation. And of course, it's about getting a donation from you and saving your soul. Is it saving or selling? I'm not sure, because if you look at the ritual, they're virtually the same. Just saying. Have something for a couple of you, more than a couple. You've asked me for a book, those who are breaking out of the Christian God spell. This is one to have. It's the 10 Christian myths that show that Jesus never existed at all. It's called Nailed by David Fitzgerald. Going to get him on here. And this is a book I highly recommend. Give me 1 second here. I want to get to a particular page for us all so you can really see. This is one I highly recommend. It will really, in just a matter of fact, no hyperbole, no agenda, just simply tells you what the history is. And I think we all can agree, we don't know what day, what year this is. We make it up because that's how we live our lives. We love make-believe. Look at commercials. Commercials are not about product selling. They're about creating a fairy tale story, a imaginary story. You have a gecko talking. I mean, yeah, that happens in everyday life. So I'd highly recommend this. You should have it. It's one, I have the hard copy, and I have literally worn the pages. It's just a great, great book. Facts are sometimes the most radical critics of all. Theologian Wilhelm Reed. So anyway, folks, if you want it, let me know, and you can have it. You can have it your way. Yes, indeed. Okay, there we go. It's really, we could even do a book review on this. It's a good book. It really is. And hopefully we can get over this nonsense of worshiping death and blaming everything on, the end of the world. And it's getting that away. Read this great article today. It said, humanity, this is not about catching a virus. The reality is humanity is stupid. We're stupid beings. And the writer of this article went on to say, now stop and think about this. You have now bought into that this is a virus. And the first thing you do is buy toilet paper. What? Are you just stupid? But that's how humans are. We're going to get into this whole thing today about repairing reality. Because the reality that we see out there today, which I contend, tell us about this COVID-19. Is it, they won't touch this. Is it a genetically modified organism? Is this a weaponized bioweapon? Seems to be very specific about who it really is killing. Seems to be really specific about how it selects its victims, which again is still nothing compared to the influenza virus that's going around still. They don't talk about that. You don't see the CDC coming out with their normal flu map. Where is the flu concentrated? And that's what viruses do. You'll get pockets where but my point to all this is for folks, it's manufactured, and look what we're manifesting. So I believe and think I've done already, and he showed me this. I did this a long time ago on this book, but we're going to get into it more because I think it's one that helps establish that this is not the end of the world. There's no dude on some white horse going to come and rescue a select group of human beings. It's just not going to happen. What we manifest and what we see has a direct correlation. And again, as Trina and I talked yesterday, which was a really good show, fear is gripping people, folks, and it's contagion. It's a contagion that is not easily dealt with like a virus. Once fear gets into this, and who knows, maybe they're doing this as a test run to see what the populace will do, how they will be reacting. I contend by this, the cursory evidence, I believe that we're being conditioned to either one, accept the fact that we have been already invaded by a more intelligent species, or that two, an invasion is imminent. I don't know. If you just look at everything that, look at Hollywood, look at what, the television, and it's no different with the movie screen. It's the same principle, same medium. See what the television is telling us. So you can only fool some of the people sometimes, but you can't fool all the people all the time. Malarkey. Exactly. Bray, that is spot on. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I contend this, it's like what they did so often when, you have a segment of the populace that just says, I ain't buying this BS, not going to do it. Keep it. Nah. And, and the hype continues and nope, not participating. Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and just live our lives. Then we become targeted. It's like, well, they're not drinking the Kool-Aid. What's wrong with them? I mean, don't they know that this is, an epidemic of major proportions? They just seem to be going along with their lives just fine. Yeah. Seems to happen in history, doesn't it? It's always those. And then if you look back in time, and as we get into this, it's what I loved about the late 60s and 70s. The hippie movement, whatever you want to call it. It was an amazing time to live through. It really was. It was a time where there was so much radicalization of thought, freedom of thought. I was recently had the opportunity to rewatch again the Monterey Pop Festival, 1968. The Mamas and the Papas actually put that on. And you can look at the people, and they did a lot of great shots of the people out there. And it started something. Many of us today, my age, and I'm so pleased to see what the younger generations are adapting to that type of state of consciousness. And it was a state of consciousness, which is a perfect segue as we get into our reading today. Here's my opinion on what Christ is. I don't believe that there was ever a person that walked, but Christ is a state of consciousness. It's a state of mind. It's a projection out of not only a philosophy, but an inward truth. That battle. Far easier to curse someone than it is to bless someone. You know, when people say things against you, the natural tendency is to rebuke. And when you learn that, no, it's just as easy to say favor, but isn't it odd how it drives deep within us, huh? All right, let's get into this. I've talked enough on here. This is a good read. I really enjoy this, and I think you will too. There are other readings out there, and I'm going to give you my perspective as we go through this, and I think it's going to be one that will help, I think, add to the change. So have your favorite libation. All right, this is volume one by Baird, Spalding, The Life and Teachings of the Masters of Far East, and this is the foreword. In presenting the life and teachings of the masters of the Far East, I wish to state that I was one of a research party of 11 persons that visited the Far East in 1894. During our stay, 3.5 years, we contacted the great masters of the Himalayas, who aided us in the translation of the records, which was of great assistance in our research work. They permitted us to enter into their lives intimately, and we were thus able to see the actual working of the great law as demonstrated by them. There is a law. We call them masters, which is merely our name for them. One living, the life described herein is entitled to reverence and consideration as a master. Records and manuscripts. Our actual experience with the masters were preserved. Personally, at that time, I thought the world was not ready for the message. I don't know if it's ready today, right? I was an independent member of the research party, and I am now publishing my notes under the title, The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, with the thought that the reader may accept or reject as he wishes. This book, which will be followed by others of the Sun series, gives the first year's experience of the expedition in relation to the masters. It includes their teachings, which was taken by us stenographically at the time, with their permission and approved by them. The masters accept that Buddha represents the way to enlightenment, but they clearly set forth that Christ is enlightenment, or a state of consciousness, for which we are all seeking, the Christ light of every individual, therefore the light of every child that is born into the world. Signed, Baird P. Spalding. Chapter 1. When we had been in India about 2 years doing regular routine research work, when I met the master known in these writings as Emil, while walking along a street in the city where we were staying, my attention was attracted to a crowd. I saw the center of interest was one of the street magicians, or fakras, that are so common in that country. As I stood there, I noticed beside me an elderly man who was not of the same caste as those about him. He looked at me and asked if I had been in India long. I'd replied, about 2 years. He asked, "Are you English?" I answered, "American." I was surprised and very much interested to find one who spoke English. I asked him what he thought of the performance then going on. He answered, it is a common occurrence in India. These fellows are called fakras, magicians, hypnotists. They are all the names implied. But underneath it all is a deeper spiritual meaning that few discern. And good will come of it someday. It is but the shadow of the thing from which it sprang. It has caused a great deal of comment, and those commenting upon it seem never to have reached the true meaning, for there certainly is a truth underneath it all. Here we parted, and I saw him only occasionally during the next 4 months. Our expedition was confronted by a problem which gave us a great deal of trouble. In the midst of our worries, I met again Emil. Immediately, he asked what was bothering me, and I began to talk about our problem. I wondered at this, for I felt that none of our party had mentioned it outside our little known circle. His familiarity with the situation was such that I felt the whole matter was known to him. He explained that he had a certain insight into the affairs and that he would endeavor to help. Within a day or two, the matter was cleared up, leaving us without a problem. We wondered at that, but with other things to occupy our time, soon forgot. As other problems came up, it became a habit with me to talk them over with Emil. It seemed that as soon as I discussed our troubles with him, they would cease to exist. My associates had met and talked with Emil, but I had said little to them about him. By this time, I read a number of books on Hindu lore, selected by Emil, and I was fully convinced that he was one of the adepts. My curiosity was keenly aroused, and I was becoming more deeply interested each day. One Sunday afternoon, Em and I were walking in a field when he called my attention to a pigeon circling overhead and casually remarked that the bird was looking for him. He stood perfectly still, and in a few moments, the bird alighted upon his outstretched arm. He said the bird has a message from his brother in the north. This proved to be a fellow worker who had not yet reached the attainment whereby he could communicate directly. So he took this means. We later found that the masters are able to communicate with each other instantly by thought transference, or, as they call it, a force much more subtle than either electricity or wireless. I then began to ask questions, and Emil showed me that he was able to call the birds to him and direct their flight while they were in the air, that the flowers and the trees would nod to him, that the wild animals would come to him fearlessly. He parted two jackals that were fighting over the body of a smaller animal that they had killed and were feeding upon. When he approached them, they stopped fighting and they put their heads in his outstretched hands in perfect trust, then resumed their meal in quiet. He even gave me one of the young wild creatures to hold in my hand. He then said to me, "This is not the mortal self. The self you see that is able to do these things, it is a truer, deeper self. It is what you know as God, God within me, God, the omnipotent one, working through me that does these things. Of myself, the mortal self, I can do nothing. It is only when I get rid of the outer entirely and let the actual, that I am, speak and work and let the great love of God come forth, that I can do these things that you have seen. When you let the love of God pour through you to all things, nothing fears you and no harm can befall you." Each day during this time, I had lessons with Emil. He would suddenly appear in my room, even if I had taken special care to lock the door before retiring. At first, his appearance at will disturbed me, but I soon saw that he took it for granted that I understood. I became accustomed to his ways and left my door open so that he could come and go as he pleased. This confidence seemed to please him. I could not understand all his teachings, and I could not accept them fully, nor was I able, with all I saw while in the East, to fully accept at that time. It required years of meditation to bring me to the realization of the deep spiritual meaning of these people's lives. Their work is accomplished without ostentation and in perfect childlike simplicity. They know the power of love to protect them, and they cultivate it until all nature is in love with them and befriends them. Thousands of the common people are killed annually by serpents and wild animals. Yet these masters have so brought forth the power of love in themselves that serpents and wild animals do not injure them. They live at times in the wildest jungles and sometimes lay their bodies down before a village to protect it from the ravages of wild animals. And no harm befalls the village or themselves. When occasion requires, they walk on water, go through fire, travel in the invisible, and do many other things that we have been accustomed to look upon as miracles performed only by one supposed in some way to possess supernatural powers. There is a striking resemblance between the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth and those of these masters as exemplified in their daily life. It has been thought impossible for man to derive his daily supply directly from the universe, to overcome death, and to perform the various so-called miracles that Jesus performed while on earth. The masters prove that all these are their daily life. They supply everything needed for their daily wants directly from the universal, including food, clothing, and money. They have so far overcome death that many of them now living are over 500 years of age, as was conclusively proved by their records. Break time, Quite amazing, is it not? It makes me somehow realize how little I have actually come. But time is not relevant. Knowledge is not constrained by time itself. We continue. There are comparatively few of these masters in India. Other cults seeming to be but offshoots of their teaching. They realize their number is limited and that only a few scholars can come to them. In the invisible, however, they can reach almost unlimited numbers, and it seems to be the greater work of their lives to reach out into the invisible and help all who are receptive to their teachings. They're teaching us now. The teachings of Emil laid the foundation for the work which we were to take up years later in our third expedition to these countries, during which time we lived with the masters continuously for 3.5 years, traveled with them, and observed their daily lives and worked throughout the Far East. Chapter 2. We arrived at Potel, from where the expedition was to start, late in the afternoon of December 22nd, 1894, and found we were to start Christmas morning upon what was to be the most memorable expedition of our whole lives. I never shall forget the few words Emil said to us that morning. These words were delivered in fluent English, although the speaker did not boast an English education, and he had never been out of the Far East. He began saying, "'Tis Christmas morning. To you, I suppose, it is the day Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ, was born. To you, the thought must come that he was sent to remit sin. To you, he must typify the great mediator between you and your God. You seem to appeal to Jesus as a mediator between you and your God, who seems to be in a stern and at times an angry God sitting off somewhere in the place called heaven, located where I do not know except it be in man's consciousness. You seem to be able to reach God only through his less austere, through his less austere and more loving Son, the great and noble one whom we all call blessed, and whose advent into the world this day commemorates. To us, this day means more. To us, this day not only means the advent into this world of Jesus, the Christ, but also this birth typifies the birth of Christ in every human consciousness. This Christmas day means the birth of the great master and teacher, the great liberator of mankind from material bondage and limitations. To us, this great soul came on earth to show more fully the way to the real God, the great, omnipotent, omnipresent, omnipotent one, to show that God is all goodness, all wisdom, all truth, all in all. The great master who came to this world this day was sent to show more fully that God not only dwells without us, but within us, that he never is, nor can be, separated from us or any of his creations, that he is always a just and loving God, that he is all things, knows all, and is all truth. Had I the understanding of all men, it is beyond my power to express to you, even in a humble way, what this holy birth means to us. We are fully convinced, and we hope you also will see, that this great master and teacher came to us that we might have a fuller understanding of life here on earth, that all mortal limitations are but man-made. Excuse me. And in no other way should they be interpreted. We know that this greatest of all teachers came to show more fully that the Christ in him and through whom he did his mighty works is the same Christ that lives in you, in me, and in all mankind, that we can, by applying his teachings, do all the works that he did and greater works. We believe that Jesus came to show more fully that God is the one great and only cause of all things, that God is all. You may have heard it said that we believe Jesus received his early trainings among us. Perhaps some of us do believe. Let that be as it is. Does it matter whether his training came from among us or is a direct revelation from God, the one source where all things really exist? From when an idea from God's mind has been contacted by one man and sent out through the spoken word, cannot one or all again contact that thought in the universal? Because one has contacted the idea and sent it out, it does not follow that it is his particular possession. If he did appropriate it and hold it, where would be room for receiving? To receive more, we must give out what we have received. If we withhold what we receive, stagnation will follow, and we will be like the wheel that generates power from the water and suddenly, of its own volition, begins to withhold the water which it is using. It will soon find itself stifled with inert water. It is only when the water is allowed to flow freely through that it is of value to the will to create power. Just so with man. When he contacts God's ideas, he must give them out in order to receive the benefit from them. He must allow all to do the same, that they may grow and develop as he is growing. I am of the opinion that what Jesus taught came to him as a direct revelation from God. And it is no doubt has come to our greater teachers. Are not all things of God? And whatever one human being can do, cannot all do? We believe you will be convinced that God is ever willing and ready to reveal himself to all men as he has revealed himself to Jesus and others. The only requisite necessary is for each one to be willing to let God come forth. We believe with all sincerity that all are created equal, that all men are one man, that the mighty works done by Jesus can and will be done by all. You will see there is nothing mysterious about these works. The mystery is only in man's mortal concept of them. We fully realize you have come to us with minds more or less skeptical. We trust you will live with us and know us as we really are. Our work and the results accomplished will leave you to accept or reject as you will. Isn't this fascinating? Now, we're so cynical today, and you can say, well, it's the masculinity here, and it appears to be more monotheistic in its approach. I don't see that. I I look at this as neutralizing the um the singleness of a name to the greatness, the greater message. That's what I'm trying to say. Easy for you to say. All right, let's get, this is cool. This is groovy stuff. Chapter 3. Emil sent us away with a few remarks in which he said, you're about to start on your expedition with these two men, Jast and I think that's Nepro, to accompany you. As you travel, it will take about 5 days to journey to your next important stopping place, about 90 miles distance. I will tarry here for a time because it will not be necessary for me to consume that time to cover the distance. How many of you have seen the more and more reports of what they're calling the humanoid UFOs? Around the world, more and more recordings of flying people. They're all dressed in black, but anyway, I digress, because this is exactly what Emil is saying. I will be there to greet you. I wish to ask that you leave one of your party here in order to make observations and to corroborate what may happen. In this way, time will be saved and he will be able to join the expedition not later than 10 days hence. We simply ask him to watch and report what he sees. We started out with Jast and Nepru in charge of the expedition, and I wish to say that the more business-like arrangements could not well be imagined. Every detail was complete and swung into line, with the rhythm and precision of music. This harmony was maintained throughout the entire expedition, which lasted 3.5 years. I tell you, some people can't stay in the same room within 10 minutes. There is knowledge, wisdom here. We arrived at the appointed village about 4 o'clock of the 5th day, and there was Emil to greet us, as he agreed. Can you imagine our amazement? We were quite certain we had come by the only traveled route and by the swiftest mode of locomotion in that country, except as the carriers do. They travel in relays and go night and day. Here was a man well advanced in years, as we thought, and one we felt would in no wise be able to negotiate a journey of 90 miles in less time than it required us to do the same. Yet, here he was. Of course, we all tried to ask questions at once and were eager to hear. These were his words. I said, when you departed, that I would be here to greet you. I am here. I wish to call your attention more fully to the fact that man in his right domain is limitless, knows no limit of time or space. Man, when he knows himself, is not obliged to toil wearily along for 5 days to accomplish 90 miles. Man in his right estate can accomplish any distance. It matters not the magnitude instantly. A moment ago, I was in the village from which you departed 5 days ago. What you saw as my body still reposes there. Your associate, whom you left in that village, will tell you that until a few moments before 4 o'clock, I conversed with him, starting that I would go to greet you as you would arrive here about this hour. What you saw as my body is still there, and your associate still beholds it, although it is at present inactive. This was done simply to show you that we are able to leave our bodies and greet you at any appointed place, at any specified time. The two who accompanied you could have accomplished this journey as I have. In this way, you will more readily realize that we are only ordinary humans of the same source as you, that there is no mystery, but that we have developed the powers given by the Father, the great omnipotent one, more fully than you have. My body will remain where it is until night. Then I will bring it here, and your associate will proceed on his way here as you did, arriving in due time. After a day's rest, we will journey to a small village, 1 day off, where we will tarry 1 night, then return here and meet your associate to see what his report will be. We will assemble this evening in the lodge. In the meantime, farewell. In the evening, after we had assembled, Emil, without opening the door, suddenly appeared in our midst and said, you have seen me appear in this room, as you would say, by magic. Let me say there is no magic about it. Here is a simple experiment which you can behold. You can see this. Consequently, you will believe. Kindly gather around so that you can see. We have a small glass of water, which one of your number has just brought from the spring. You see that a minute particle of ice is forming in the very center of the water. You will see it gather itself, particle by particle, more ice, until now the whole of the water in the glass is frozen. What has happened? I held the central atoms of the water in the universal until they became formed, or, in other words, I lowered their vibrations until they became ice. And all the other particles formed around them until the whole has become ice. You can apply this to this little glass. The tub, the pond, the lake, the sea, the whole mass of the water of the earth. What would happen? All would be frozen, would it not? To what purpose? None. You ask by what authority? I say by using a perfect law. But in this case, to what end? Nothing, as no good has been accomplished or could be accomplished. Had I gone on determined to carry this out fully, what would have happened? The reaction? To whom? To me? I know the law, and what I express returns to me as truly as I express it. Therefore, I express only the good, and the good returns to me only as good. You can readily see that. Had I persisted in the freezing, the cold would have reacted upon me long before I had accomplished the end, and I would, in reaping the harvest of my desire, had been frozen. Whereas, if I express the good, I reap the harvest of my good eternally. It's deep stuff, folks. My appearance in this room tonight may be explained in this way. In the little room where you left me, I held my body in the universal by raising its vibration, and it returned to the universal, or, as we say, returning it to the universal where all substance exists. Then, through my I am, my Christ consciousness, I held my body in my mind until its vibrations were lowered, and it took form right here in this room, and you could see it. Wherein is there any mystery? Am I not using the power or the law given me by the Father through the beloved Son? Is not this Son you and I and all of mankind? Wherein lies the mystery? There is none. Consider the faith represented by the mustard seed. It comes to us from the universal through the Christ within, which has already been born within us all. As a minute speck, it enters through the Christ or superconscious mind, the place of receptivity within ourselves. Then it must be carried to the mount or the highest within ourselves, the very top of our head. It is held there. We must then allow the Holy Spirit to descend. Now comes the admonition. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy strength, and with all thy mind. Think, does the meaning come? Heart, soul, strength, mind? Is there anything to do at this point but to turn it all over to God, the Holy Spirit, the whole I Spirit in action? This Holy Spirit comes in many ways, perhaps as tiny entities tapping and seeking admittance. We must accept and allow the Holy Spirit to come in and unite with the minute point of light or seed of knowing and revolve around it and adhere to it, just as you saw the particles of ice adhere to the central particle. And it will grow in form, particle by particle, circle by circle, just as the ice multiplied and expressed that seed of knowing, until you are able to say to the mountain of difficulties, be thou removed and cast into the sea, and it will be done. Call this fourth dimension what you wish. We call it God in expression through the Christ in us. It is in this way the Christ was born. Mary, the great mother, perceived the ideal. The ideal was held in her mind, then conceived in the soil of her soul, held for a time there, then brought forth or born as the perfect Christ child, the firstborn, the only begotten, the Son of God. He was nourished and protected, given this very best of mother, watched over and cherished until he grew from childhood into manhood. It is thus that the Christ comes to all of us. First, as an ideal, and I'm just going to say, they say ideal, but it's an idea planted in the soil of our soul, the central part where God is, held in mind as the perfect ideal, then brought forth or born as the perfect child, the Christ consciousness. I love this. This is ties in very nicely, doesn't it? Wow. Time does go by. You will have seen what has been accomplished here. Doubt your own eyes. I do not blame you. I get the thought of hypnotism from the minds of some. My brothers, is there one here who feels that he does not have the power to exercise every God-given faculty that he has seen brought forth tonight? Do you think for a moment that I am in any way controlling your thought or vision? Do you think that I could, if I would, cast a hypnotic spell over any or all of you? For did you not all see? Is it not recorded in your own great book that Jesus entered a room with the doors closed? He just came in as I have done. Do you think for a moment that Jesus, the great master and teacher, needed in any way to be hypnotized? He used his own God-given power, as I have done tonight. Let me say that I have done nothing but what each of you can do. Not only you, but every child that is or has been born into the world or universe has the same power to do just what you have seen accomplished this night. I wish to get this clearly before your minds. Let me also say that you are individuals, that you are not personalities, that you are free wills, not automatons. Jesus did not need to hypnotize, and we do not need to hypnotize. Doubt us all you wish until you are fully satisfied as to our honesty. Put the idea of hypnotism away for the time, or at least let it lie passive until you have gone deeper into the work. All we ask is that you keep an open mind. Chapter 4. We entered the little village, about 200 inhabitants, 1.5 hours before sunset. And when it was known that Just was with us, I believe every villager, old and young, and every pet, the domestic animals, came to greet us. While we were the object of more and less curiosity, it was immediately noted that Jest was the center of interest, greeted by all with the utmost reverence. After a few moments, he said a word to the villagers, and all but a few returned to their usual duties. Jest turned to us and asked if we wished to go with him while the camp was being prepared for the night. 5 of our party said that they were tired after the day's journey and wished to rest. The remainder of us followed Jest and the handful of villagers towards the far side of the clearing that surrounded the village. After crossing the clearing, we had gone about a short distance into the jungle when we came upon a form of a man lying upon the ground as though dead. That was our impression at first glance. At second glance, however, showed that the repose suggested calm sleep rather than death. We stood staring as though transfixed, for we saw that the figure lying on the ground was Jest. Suddenly, as Jest walked towards it, the figure became animated and rose to a sitting position. As the figure and Jest stood face to face for an instant, there was no mistaking the identity. It was Jest. All saw that it was he. Instantly, the Jest that we had known had disappeared, and there was but one figure standing before us. Of course, all of this was accomplished in less than a minute than it takes to tell, and the wonder was that not one of us questioned. The 5 who had been left behind at camp came running without signal from us. We afterwards asked them why they came. The answers were, "We don't know." The first we knew We were all on our feet and running to you. We simply do not know why we did it. None of us recall any signal. We found ourselves running in your direction before any of us realized what we were doing. One of our number remarked, "My eyes are open so wide that I see far beyond the veil of death and the wonders that stand revealed beyond conception." Another said, "I see the whole world overcoming death. How vividly the words come back. The last enemy, death, shall be overcome. Is it not this fulfillment of these words? What pygmies are mere intellects in comparison to the gigantics, but simply understanding, and yet we have dared to look upon ourselves as giants of intellect. Why, we are mere babes. I just began to see the meaning of you must be born again. How true the words. I leave the reader to imagine our surprise or bewilderment. Here was a man with whom we had been in daily contact and by whom we had been served daily, that was able to lay his body down for the protection of others and go on and serve so efficiently. Could it do otherwise than recall? He that is greatest among you shall be servant or shall serve. I think there was not one among us, but from that moment lost all fear of death. Wow. How much would you pay? What would you give to get that fear totally out of you? There is a wealth that not gold or silver can be measured towards. These people are accustomed to laying a body down before a village in the jungle of a country infested with marauding men and animals, and that village is as safe from the ravages of men and animals as though it were in a civilized country. It was very evident that Jas's body had been lying where we found it for a considerable time. The hair had grown long and bushy, and in it were the nest of little birds, particular to that country. These birds had built their nest, reared their young, and the young had flown away, thus giving unmistakable evidence of the time the body had been in that position and inactive. These birds were very timid and will abandon their nest at the slightest disturbance. This shows the great love and trust of the little birds. Well, we'll stop right there. I think this is pretty far out stuff. I don't know about you, and it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's obvious the masses, will never come here. It's about how many views, this is stuff for me it's valuable. It's more valuable than paper money, more valuable than gold or silver or anything. It inspires me. I don't know. So, wow. Yeah. We'll have more time to talk about it. I'm just reading this. It's powerful. It's like Trina and I were talking about. It's not about a power of an individual. It's the state of consciousness. And I love how these masters approach the divine, source, the creator, however you want to term it. Why do you need a mediator? If your God is angry, you don't need that God. Why would you serve an angry God? And the thing that I'm getting in here, you noticing that there's nothing about worship. There is reverence. There is respect. Not bowing down, not, is we're going to learn, and I'm kind of giving it away here. The question that will be asked is, why would one spirit demand another spirit worship it? The the state of consciousness is to serve. Now, you can't worship something because it's not serving. There, you see where the contradiction comes in? And that's what we're getting out of this, the first introduction of the journey here. It's the servitude of the heart, allowing that love to flow through. As ML said, if you start looking up to me, giving me all the credit, you've blown it. You haven't figured this out yet. Powerful, powerful, powerful stuff, folks. And in this day where the news media is going crazy, we're all going to find ourselves to be protected. Perfect love casteth out fear. It can't exist. I'll share with you a vision that I had many years ago. Fear is what tries to encompass the individual state of consciousness, because if it can begin to permeate particle by particle. But where love is at the center, favor, what it begins to do is the reverse. It begins to absorb fear, the darkness, and the darkness literally will part. It's because of the light within us. Okay. Far out stuff, man. I mean, I just feel it empowers you, doesn't it? It does me. Anyway. Well, thank y'all for joining me. This was just cool stuff. Remember, the summer of 2020, the summer of healing. And you know, if the hippies had just figured it out a little bit more and really figured out what love was, it wasn't just sex, drugs, and rock and roll, that there was something that was much more what we would call mystical, but really is this the foundation of us all. Who knows where it'd have gone? But it doesn't give up. That's the cool thing. Okay. I hope everyone's doing good. Thank you for joining me, and appreciate all of you so much. And see you tomorrow. We'll continue. Get to chapter 5. I love this story. In my mind, I'm right there in India with them. Aren't you? You know, what I'm seeing is those wild animals are those Bengal tigers. Imagine if one visited your village, it could cause a real problem. And actually that's part of history. It actually did. Well, thank you, Amy. Love to you too. Grandpa, good to see you. Jenny and Infinite Frequencies and all the family here. Thank you all. This is a family. It's amazing how we continue to see the metamorphosizing of this community. And we're growing. We're growing. All right. So I'll see y'all tomorrow. Be good to yourselves. Love yourselves, man. Quit condemning yourselves. You got to quit doing that. Start praising yourselves. And if you find that you screw up on something, so what? You're here for the experience. You're experiencing what it is to be imperfect. As the masters are teaching us, we come equipped with this, folks. This is the true us. That's far out. All right. Much love to you. Bye-bye.